Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. Lots to get to this morning. So we are starting with all of the Republican candidates descended on the unsuspecting state of Iowa.
Poor people.
Some really interesting moments that unfolded there. We're also going to bring in a reporter who was there on the ground to give us all of the juicy details. We are also keeping track of the very latest in terms of those horrific, deadly wildfires in Hawaii. I mean, the news just continues to get worse and worse, and residents getting increasingly frustrated with the lack of government support. So we'll break all of that down for you. We also have some news in terms of potential new Trump indictments coming down this week, and some new revelations about exactly what his team was up to there in Georgia. We also have more big developments in terms of a potential Big Three auto shutdown, some very revealing moments from one of the big executives there. We're also going to tackle the surprise political hit topping the charts. Maybe you guys have heard this. And guess what, guys? Crypto boy wonder SBF has landed himself in jail. So we'll break all of that down for you and more. But we did want to start with what's going on the ground in Iowa.
Yeah, that's right. We got to start with Iowa. It's shocking and interesting developments, not really, in terms of how everything went down. Ron DeSantis took the stage with Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa and was met with chants of "We want Trump." Absolutely brutal, but also indicative of where the situation is. Let's take a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Iowa State Fair, let's welcome Governor Kim Reynolds and Governor Ron DeSantis.
They're hanging in there with us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here as we have the opportunity. Well, first of all, welcome back to the State Fair. Ron, it's great to have you here, so welcome back.
No, it's great to be here. We're really excited to see everybody. We appreciate...
Hey, you know what? We're in Iowa, and in Iowa, we're Iowa nice. So let's give everybody the opportunity to hear our candidates. So we'll stop until you do, but we're all going to have an opportunity to hear from each and every candidate. That's what we've been doing. So, okay.
Oof, what a savage moment.
Brutal.
So the woman scolding her own constituents is the governor of the state, Kim Reynolds, who clearly, Krystal, if it was up to her, she would endorse DeSantis tomorrow. She's been playing footsie with him the entire time. He has constantly kind of been kissing up to her, over many interviews and other things that he has given. And I just think it's a terrible look, from a performance perspective, even to just give in to the crowd and give them what they want whenever they're shouting, "We want Trump." I mean, yeah, they were loud, but guess what? You've got the mic. Like, you can at least get it on the record. You should just pretend not to notice. But to do the whole call out thing and Iowa nice, I think it showed a lot of weakness. To be fair, I mean, DeSantis isn't the one that did it, but that's just the last thing that you want happening at, kind of flagship political event in Iowa. And, people need to understand this is a big thing, the Iowa State Fair.
Oh, yeah.
We'll remember, the butter cow with Ted Cruz in 2016. This is often the site of some of the most famous, moments in a lot of primary politics.
Many epic corn dog pictures have
corn
come out of the
dogs.
Iowa State
Yeah,
Fair.
go-karts, basketball. They all try to pretend. They don their human suits for 24 hours and try to pretend that they're just like us by eating deep fried Oreo.
Like, I'm going to wear a flannel and wear
There
jeans.
you go. Oh,
yeah,
God, yeah, I can't stand
exactly.
it. My personal favorite was a banner that was flying over the Iowa State. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. Seems to have been planted by the Trump campaign. Says, quote, "Be likable, Ron," and puts Ron's logo like Jeb Bush, Ron with a capital exclamation mark. So Trump, pretty much the unambiguous winner of the Iowa State Fair here, Krystal. Not dominating the event even whenever he's not on the stage and forcing his only real rival to basically have to shut down his interview with this governor of the state, basically being openly disrespected by supposedly her constituents. Right?
I mean, it actually low-key made me feel a little bad for Ron DeSantis.
I feel bad for him, too. That's hard.
Brutal. Yeah. And what are you going to do? There's no good way to deal with that state of affairs. And there's a couple things, because you have to, in that moment, as you're sitting there on the stage and you're hearing the crowd jeering you among a Republican base that very recently really loved this guy. And so you're thinking, geez, did I not only screw myself in terms of this presidential race, but in terms of any political future? I think that is a very open possibility at this point. And then in terms of Governor Kim Reynolds, if you are governor of a state and you did well there, she won by a hefty margin, she's got a pretty good approval rating, I believe, in the state of Iowa, et cetera. she's having a realization of just how shallow her support is. Like, she doesn't command any sort of real, she doesn't command any sort of real loyalty from her own constituents. Nothing, no one in the party compares to Trump. That's just the bottom line situation. So I was also thinking about the state of Iowa has been significantly demoted in terms of the political season. You know, it's still first for the Republican side, but that race is looking all but over, you know, as evidenced by the chance that we show you there. And then on the Democratic side, you know, Iowa's been completely demoted in a lot of ways for good reasons, because they completely screwed up the caucuses last time around. But this is so central to that state's identity.
Yes, it is.
I mean, being the first caucus site, where the first votes are cast, and having this every 4 years pageantry of all the candidates going around from place to place, and they're very used to meeting the presidential candidates in person in these little gatherings, et cetera. And, you know, that era, especially on the Democratic side, is completely over.
Yeah, you know, you're right. And Vivek Ramaswamy decided to warm up the crowd with a rendition of Lose Yourself by Eminem, donning his old persona Davek from back in the days whenever he was in college. Let's take a listen.
Now the clock's run out, time's up. Over, plow, snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. So mad, but he won't give up.
So apparently what happened, Krystal, is that's his open song. And he asked Kim Reynolds, he said, do you know this song? She said, no, I don't know the song. And so he said, well, I'll show you this
How
song.
do you exist and not know that song?
Listen, you know, boomers are people in their own right. And they've got interesting tastes. I guess let's just put it that way. I'm sorry, boomers who are paying audience. We love you guys. Don't worry. I just like to make fun of you. That said, it was an interesting move. I think what I actually found kind of funny about the whole thing is that, you know, 20 years ago, that would have been one of the biggest stories in the whole country. Like the whole Howard Dean scream, which I think, wasn't that at the Iowa State Fair? Or it was a similar event.
It was after Iowa, after it didn't do well, yeah.
But yeah, so it was like something like, or, you know, Bill Clinton. I still remember, you know, like reading about how Bill Clinton playing the saxophone on, what is it, Arsenio Hall was like a landmark moment for the country. I remember reading that and being like, what? That's so stupid.
It's hard to wrap your head
around.
I
mean, monoculture was a crazy thing. But, you know, this is just one of those that goes like semi-viral-ish on Twitter, and then everybody just kind of moves on. Maybe that's probably for the good, so that people don't see their lowest moments. But I just thought it was funny, you know, to show all of this. But I think that we have to come back to Trump. Trump was the central figure at this thing. He dominated every single event, even when other candidates were there. Kim Reynolds was doing the rounds at almost every turn. It was, we want Trump, and he got the biggest audience at the entire thing.
I would argue that at this point, Vivek and DeSantis are basically even in terms of being, quote unquote, Trump's top rival. Trump doesn't really have a top rival at this point. I'm also going to give you a little bit of a hot take on the Davek moment there.
Okay.
I kind of like, I mean, I respect
the
fact.
I don't hate it. I
respect the fact that you are actually willing to like publicly humiliate yourself to that degree. Yeah, sure. Whereas if I mean, just even thinking about doing something like that makes me want to curl up in a ball and die. So respect for that. The other thing I would say is you were talking about how all these candidates, like they don their human suits and try to be like, see, I'm just like you people. I mean, at least Vivek is doing something that is true to his genuine pre-political personality. Yeah. And it reminds me a little bit, I mean, this is like a wild comparison, but it reminds me a little bit to Trump's first foray at the Iowa State Fair. Instead of him, let me put on the jeans and the button, like the flannel or whatever, he showed up as he does. I remember he was giving people rides on, I think, his private helicopter.
You're right.
So he showed up as himself. And I do think that's one of the things that's like an enduring appeal of Trump. He sets the standard for like who he is, how he's going to approach this, what he's going to say. And, you know, people, unfortunately, better or worse, can't get enough of it.
That is such a good point that actually just hit home. Trump never pretended to be anything but himself. He didn't ever want to spend the night in Iowa. He always liked to come home and sleep in his own bed in Trump Tower. He would rocket in on Trump Force One.
Yeah.
He would come in on Trump Force One. He'd land in the Trump helicopter. He would roll around. He'd put on a big show, and then he would get the hell out of there. And he, you know, and I remember because, we were covering it at the time. It would have Ted Cruz, doing the butter cow, and Marco Rubio, and everybody be in their jeans, and Trump was just in a full suit. He just didn't care. And it was just one of those where he's like, this is me, and people loved him for it. And, if I was looking back at the polls, it's right around now when Trump started to dominate every single Republican primary poll, actually less so than he is even right now, which just gives you, a good example. I think it was Harry Enton, the polling analyst, said that no candidate has ever led this much in a primary this early in the race and not gone on to be the eventual nominee. So barring some black swan event or something like that, things are looking pretty clear. And Iowa, clearly, even at the grassroots level, where Ted Cruz did have a lot of success, still doesn't seem to be manifesting for any of Trump's opponents. Trump himself gave a little bit of an answer on Stop the Steal at Iowa, showing us that he very much is the exact same man that he always has been. Let's take a listen.
He can't win the fairway. He's way down in the polls.
President Trump, did you intend to overturn the 2020 election?
You know the answer.
If you didn't hear, that was, do you intend to overturn the 2020 election? Trump, quote, you know the answer.
What does that mean?
I mean, yeah, I think we do know the answer. Listen, once again, we come back to, he has never really told us that he has never presented himself as anything other than what he is. And I think that is what the primary voters in particular appreciate the most about him. And, even every answer, it's just vintage Trump. He looks exactly the same as whenever he was there, 7-something years ago. And it's just, in the same flashback of just how well it appears he's going to be going to do in this race.
And yet the lack of sort of drama and interest in the Iowa State Fair, I mean, this is really a blip on the radar. It is a sign of just how little competition there is and how much of a foregone conclusion both of these primaries feel like. And listen, I mean, when you have an incumbent president, that's fairly typical, right? They're very likely to get the nomination on the Democratic side. But, what isn't typical on the Democratic side is the total ambivalence of the Democratic electorate towards their guy who is in the presidency. I mean, Barack Obama, even at his lowest point, the Democratic base loved this guy, still loves this guy. Very different set of affairs with Joe Biden. And then on the Republican side, this should have been really contested. There was a lot of media hype about the challenge to Trump and all of this, and it looks like just as much of a foregone conclusion on the Republican side as it does on the Democratic side. The fact that the governor of the state basically threw in for DeSantis and no one cares whatsoever, that you had a bunch of evangelical leaders, including some in the state of Iowa, who signaled they wanted to move on from Trump. Also didn't matter, even a state that, where the religious right has always historically been very important and, liked people like Mike Huckabee, like people like Rick Santorum, like people like Ted Cruz. It just shows you that, whatever drama is going to come in this primary season has not manifested itself yet, let me say, and may have less to do with who the eventual nominees are and more to do with some of the legal battles that we're going to be talking about in a bit.
You are absolutely right. All right, we got a great guest standing by, Shelby Talcott. We're going to put her in the show now because she was on the ground in Iowa. She's going to give us a little bit of an insight. Let's get to it.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.